BLR family, and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't subscribed to Black Label Reviews, go ahead and do so at this time. Be sure to set the post notification bell. When we do upload, you will receive an immediate notification. The trial over the murder of rapper Nipsey Hussle began in Los Angeles on June 15th, more than 3 years after the killing. Eric R. Holder Jr. is facing 1 count of murder and 1 of possession of a firearm by a felon, along with 2 each of attempted murder and assault with a firearm. The latter charges relate to 2 bystanders who were injured in the alleged shooting. During the opening statements, Holder's attorney conceded that Holder shot and killed Hussle-born Aramis Ashtagam. Aaron Jansen, a public defender, focused on the severity of the charges, claiming to the jury that the killing was not premeditated but happened in the heat of passion. Let's listen in, BLR family, and please drop your comments below.
So much security video and so many witnesses that place Eric Holder at the murder scene. The issue is not really who shot and killed Nipsey Hussle, but whether that man should face murder 1 or manslaughter.
No sooner than he walks between the cars, he pulls out not 1 but 2 guns, and he starts shooting.
The prosecution punctuated opening statements with security video outside of Nipsey Hussle's Marathon clothing store.
Off of the screen where you'll pick up Mr. Holder walking directly up to the group. He walks between the 2 parked cars where the gentlemen are, and he starts shooting. And if you look closely, you can at one point see him shoot from the left hand and the right hand. And you'll see him retreat back after a few shots. And then he goes back and he shoots some more, and he retreats back, and then he goes back and he shoots even more.
The suspect is seen in video from multiple angles and later captured on other cameras, leaving the scene with a revolver in one hand and a semi-automatic in the other.
1 bullet transected his spine, so even if he had survived, he would have been paraplegic. You will find by that kick to the head at the end, that it was very personal.
DA called the murder premeditated and personal.
Eric walking in between the 2 cars, looking at Nipsey and saying, "You're through." And Nipsey, after being shot, responding, "You got it."
Little reaction from 32-year-old Eric Holder, but his attorney Aaron Jansen may have shocked jurors with this first statement.
Mr. Holder returned and shot Mr. Askew.
But what his public defender also told the jury, there was no premeditation, just a passionate response to Nipsey telling him he'd heard he was a snitch, one of the harshest accusations in the gang world.
That so inflamed and enraged Mr. Holder, the evidence will show that without thinking, and a few minutes later, a mere 9 minutes or so later, Mr. Holder returned and shot Mr. Askew. While he's charged with first-degree, premeditated, deliberate murder, in fact, it should be voluntary manslaughter.
He also tried to minimize the other 4 counts facing Holder, attempted murder and assault against 2 men hit by bullets.
There'll be no evidence that they had anything between them, that they didn't even know each other.
Well, the prosecution has promised plenty of witnesses, some that might be reluctant, actually, to testify, but also who will appear. The woman who drove Eric Holder away from the murder scene, she had no idea what happened.
March 31st, 2019, at about 3:20 in the afternoon, there was an explosion of violence at the intersection of Slauson and Crenshaw. At that place, and at that time, the world lost Aramis Joseph Askew, better known to the world as Nipsey Hussle. The defendant in this case, Mr. Holder, was also an aspiring rapper. They both grew up in a neighborhood of hardworking men and women, but also a neighborhood that was claimed by one of the largest criminal street gangs in Los Angeles County. As a result of being from that neighborhood and having relationships in that neighborhood. Both were recruited into the gang at a fairly young age. There was a conversation between Mr. Holder and Mr. Astrodome minutes before Mr. Holder shot and killed Mr. Astrodome. And you will hear from at least two different witnesses that that conversation had something to do with snitching. If a gang member is considered a snitch, it's a whole lot different from being considered a snitch by your little brother or your little sister. There's a range of consequences for people who snitch, but no gang member wants to be considered a snitch. It is highly offensive to any gang member to even be suggested that he is a snitch. You're going to hear and see evidence that he had plenty of opportunity to think about what he was going to do before he did it and did it. And I make that point because we charge not just murder, but premeditated and deliberate murder. The difference between premeditated and deliberate murder and murder will be argued at the end of the case.
Nipsey Hussle had made an accusation against Mr. Holder that he was a snitch. That so inflamed and enraged Mr. Holder, the evidence will show that without thinking, and a few minutes later, a mere 9 minutes or so later, Mr. Holder returned and shot Mr. Astrodome. He did not have time to cool off. The evidence will show that it was very soon after this accusation was made publicly against him that he was so enraged and triggered by this emotional response that he acted without premeditating. That's what the evidence will show. And the evidence will show that while he's charged with first-degree premeditated deliberate murder, in fact, it should be voluntary manslaughter because he was acting under heat of passion.
Double up, 3 or 4 times, I ain't telling no lies, I just run it up. Never let a hard time humble us. Double up, I ain't telling no lies, I just, yeah.
Subscribe to Black Label Reviews.